Hello everybody, my name is Caleb from Caleb the Video Maker 2, and this video, I already recorded it once with the audio, but it screwed up and made a big mess. So rather than redoing it, I just decided to take a couple screenshots from the video and talk about them. So in this first picture we can see I showed off my old version of phpMyAdmin, but that's fine. It doesn't really matter for most purposes. And yeah, so I was on phpMyAdmin, and then I went on to show off my view count on YouTube, because that's a very large number in one day. I was pretty proud, so yeah, let's make that even bigger, so then I'll be happy. Then what I did was I created my database bank, which will hold both of our tables, and one of the tables were the member information, and then the bank account information. So the first thing, we made the member information. So we have member info. We have all the columns, member ID, which is the primary key. We have this set to auto increment because it'll raise up one each time without us having to type in that specific number. And then we have first name, which is varchar, variable character length, because everybody's first name can be different length. Last name, same concept. Phone, we have it set to char because all phone numbers are 10 characters. And we set a default. That way we could have it set to not null, because what we could have done is left it available to be null. But if we require a phone number, we'll get more responses. And even if they don't put a phone number, it'll be set to 0, which will help boost performance. And then we have a pass or password, which is char 40. The reason it's 40 characters and not varchar is because we're actually going to use the SHA1 hashing function, which will give us a 40 character representation of our original entry. We had state, varchar 20, city, varchar 40, zip code, char 5, because all zip codes are 5 characters. And then we had address, which is basically just the street address. Now the primary key, as you can see, this is called an index. It indexes the member ID, and the type of index is primary key. That way, MySQL knows what primary key is for this table. Now the engine is InnoDB, and if you remember, that will allow for transactions and foreign key constraints. Sweet. So next thing I did was I moved on to create my next table, bank account info. That's what BA stands for. Which had account ID, which is in this table. This was the primary key, and this will basically just have an ID for each account, and it's set to auto increment for the same reason I just said, because it'll go up by itself. Auto increment it. Account holder ID, this is a foreign key, and basically we have it set to represent the same information in the other table because we want it to match up right. You don't want this one to be something else when the other one's something else. So if we go back to the other photo, we can see that it's also an integer. So then we have an amount, which is a decimal with in parentheses 10, 2. This means it's counting in base 10, which is how we count, and 2 is how many decimal places after the decimal. So this will allow for cents, such as 1050 rather than 10.500. You see what I'm saying? And passcode is var binary 16. The reason for this is we're going to use our AES encrypt function, which gives us a 16 character binary data. That's why it's var binary. Primary key is the account ID, and the foreign key, account holder ID, references member info member ID, because they're both the same information. Now we could say, we could give it conditions on what to do if there's a mess up, but we don't have to do that because there's a default. So I'm pretty sure it'll just give us an error if we try and delete the mother member ID. I hope that makes sense. And if you haven't noticed, everything is set to not null because we don't want any null information, and there's nothing that will need null information at the moment. For example, when we had phone number, That one was questionable, but I decided to give it a default. Then I moved on and inserted a value into our table. Now, if you remember, we could have said what columns to insert the information into. That would have allowed us to ignore the 1 because it would know, because it's auto increment, you remember, and 1 is the first number, so it would auto increment up to 1 or 0. I'm not too sure. I think 1. So yeah, so instead I decided to just put a 1 in there to save some typing, and you can see the columns over on the side. That's what line up. So the first one is member ID, and then Caleb is my first name, last name. This is phone, password with the function SHA1, blah, 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 blah. That's pretty sweet, yeah. And then what I did was I created information in the other table, which was insert into bank account info, the values 1, which was the primary key, so the first bank account, and then also the next one represents the first person, which, because it's a primary key, which points back to the ID number 1, which was Caleb Curry in the other table. AES encrypt, the first thing is food. That is what we are encrypting. And we also have a salt, which is salt is good, because that's what we use to encrypt. It's sort of like a little key to figure out what is going on. So then I inserted that stuff, and then I selected the account ID, holder ID, the amount, and then what I used was AES decrypt, and the column was passcode, if you remember. And then what was the salt? Salt is good. From the table, bank account info. Then what I did was I selected it, and it will show us that the result is food for the AES decrypt. And it's the account ID 1, Caleb Curry. First account holder would be Caleb Curry. Now, if we changed the salt, which is salt is good, I just conveniently named it that. You can name it whatever you want. It will give us, so as you can see, I changed it, and then it will give us a different result. As you can see, I put salt is good with 2 D's, and the result is null. So you will not be able to figure it out without the proper salt. So that's pretty much all I have to say in this video, and I hope you learned a little bit more, or kind of see the pieces fall together. And in the next video, I will be speaking of aggregate functions, I think. I don't know. But you'll just have to see, and it's going to be awesome. So I'll see you there. Thank you for watching, and subscribe. My name is Caleb Curry.